Now you can listen to Wine and Dine Radio while shopping at the grocery store or your neighborhood wine merchant. Wine and Dine Radio can be heard using your wireless internet on your cell phone. You're listening to iWineRadio. iWineRadio is a production of Food Tastes Better with Wine on the web at iWineRadio.com. Hey guys, I thank you for listening to iWineRadio, and we are still the only wine channel on iTunes Radio. If you go look under iTunes Radio icon and scroll down to News and Talk Directory, and it's listed alphabetically, click on that and the stream comes up immediately. iWineRadio.com, where you can find links to individual guests. And if anyone's interested in advertising or becoming an underwriter or sponsor, please contact us at iWineRadio.com. We really, really appreciate your support. The more support we get, the more conversations I can have with fascinating people around the world, including you. If you have a story to tell that you'd like to share on iWine Radio, go to iWineRadio.com and contact us, and we'll go from there.
Hi, we're Caren Osten-Gerszberg and Leah Odze-Epstein.
And we're co-editors of the anthology Drinking Diaries, Women Serve Their Stories Straight Up.
And you can learn more from our blog, The Drinking Diaries, at www.drinkingdiaries.com.
So there I was doing my ritual of warming up on the stationary bike at the YMCA. And I'm reading an article from in More magazine that was in the September 2012 issue. And it is an essay excerpt from a book, as this all unfolded and I researched this, called Drinking Diaries, Women Serve Their Stories Straight Up. And I'm telling you, whether the women in your life, or you are a woman who drinks or who does not drink, or you are for drinking or you are against drinking, you're passionate about all your reasons for or against, or you have warm, fuzzy memories and associations, this is a absolute must read. And joining us today, I'm so pleased to introduce to you, are the editors. And this all began as a blog, and the blog website is drinkingdiaries.com. So I would imagine that this is going to be something that is going to be continuing, although the editors will be able to tell me if I'm right or wrong on that one. So we have Caren Osten-Gerszberg and Leah Odze-Epstein joining us today. And ladies, you are both extremely well known in journalism circles for what you do beyond this Drinking Diaries. And so I'm curious, how and why did you put together this blog to begin with and then see a need for the book? And let me start by asking Leah first.
Hi. Well, we started the blog because Caren came over one night. We would have family dinners often. We're neighbors and friends, and Caren lives around the corner. And she would come over with her family on Friday nights. And one Friday night, Caren was struggling with an issue with her mom, who had started drinking heavily as she got older. And I am the daughter of an alcoholic mother who has been sober for many years, but I've sort of been there, done that. So she came to me for advice, and I told her maybe we'd go to an Al-Anon meeting, but then I could not bring myself to go to one. I had been before, and I just, for whatever reason, I didn't feel comfortable. And so we fantasized about maybe there were other women out there who wanted to talk about drinking but didn't want to go to a church basement, and so we started the blog, and that's how it all began.
Caren, it's so incredibly personal and private.
What part?
Well, I mean, I interview people all over the world who make wine, who make spirits, and right. I am embrace this, and it's a pleasurable part of life. But I am so fully aware that there is so much abuse and overuse, and there are so many lives that are hurt. And the stories in Drinking Diaries, many of them it's almost confessional in nature, but and sharing and reaching out to people, and it's cathartic. But just talking to somebody about something that's going on with your mother, your father, yourself, it's very, very private.
Yes, it is. But, as Leah was saying, I was very much at a loss of how to deal with my mother's drinking. I had never been faced with an alcoholic that I knew, not a friend, not a family member. And so when my own mother, who I have always been very close with, started drinking really heavily in her 60s, I needed someone to talk to, and Leah was kind of a natural, go-to person because I knew that her mother was a recovered alcoholic. And then when we decided to share our stories and to create this forum for other women to share their stories, it felt like everyone, could commiserate together or celebrate together, because both Leah and I enjoy drinking, and I happen to love wine and, have also done work around wine and winemakers, and but this was like a whole separate world that I had suddenly, felt like I was thrusted into, and that it seemed, well, what can we do to help other people who are in the same boat as I found myself in? It's
almost like a parallel plane that is always present, along with all the pleasure of wine, the joy of wine, all the positive things. There's always that hovering of negative. I've seen over the years, being in the business, wholesale, retail, sommeliers. I mean, there's so many people who have problems with alcohol.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's interesting because we do, we interview a different person every Wednesday on our blog, and we have interviewed, masters of wine, female masters of wine, and wine makers, and as well as just writers and college students and older women. And for some people, for many, many women, it is a loaded subject. Even if it's not loaded for them, it becomes loaded because somebody in their life has an issue, which is, what it was for me. But we certainly felt like everybody could relate to this topic.
I love the fact that you picked from all the different people that you've interviewed, things that are you have a whole spectrum. Even I think probably the most interesting essay to me was written from someone whose religion forbids alcohol consumption at all, and the shame that was associated with that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I've interviewed winemakers from countries where drinking alcohol is forbidden, and their answer to me was always, well, there was wine and there was alcohol way before there was the religion that said we couldn't.
Right, that's so true.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And we found that even people who have said to us outright, oh, no, alcohol and drinking, it's not loaded for me, it's not even an issue in my life, they'll come back to us and maybe after reading the book and say, oh, yeah, I remember this one thing, or I feel like everybody has some entry point because drinking is so pervasive in our culture and in other cultures as well.
The one essay that I think anybody who's been, well, a lot of college girls, but certainly where my first kiss where I wasn't drunk sort of a thing, one of the essays was quite interesting. And this time of year, I mean, it scares me. If you're out on the road from 4 o'clock on, what percentage of the population has had a drink and they're driving?
Right. I think about that all the time around the holidays. It's pretty scary. Yeah, and the woman who wrote the essay, My First Kiss, Adrienne Edinburgh McQueen, she had won a Glamour magazine essay contest writing about her sobriety and her experiences with alcohol. So she was really exploring this topic in depth for the first time. very bravely, I might add.
I think the majority of writers were, even though some of them had perhaps written previously or thought about the issue previously, the majority were really digging deep in terms of, creating this essay for the first time. So that was kind of monumental for some, and even those that had written about it before, even Joyce Maynard, for example, we really encouraged her to dig deeper, and she did, and I think she found it cathartic, and it produced a really strong essay.
The one essay, Kids, Thank You for Pot Smoking, is very, very timely, and I'm sure that there are many, many people who have lived in an environment of an alcoholic, or an alcoholic. They live a life of dry alcoholic because the generation before was alcoholic, would probably prefer that vice over alcohol vice. And there's an essay for everyone in Drinking Diaries. You must have had a hard time picking, just narrowing it down to what you have in the book.
I would say yes, we did, because it was very important to us to provide a really wide variety of perspectives and ages and cultures and experiences, and that was very much an important goal of putting this collection together, because we wanted, any woman to be able to pick up the book and find something that she could relate to.
And how did the two of you, decide to break it up into these 5 different parts? It's almost like a timeline of a woman's life.
Yeah, Caren, can you remember sort of how that came about?
Well, I think our editor, she asked us, how can we break this down? Because, the way that you want to present it when it's a collection of essays is you want it to thematically relate. So we really spread out, kind of the titles of all of our essays, knowing them so well by that point, and it was almost like a natural fit for us to do, people who grew up with it, people that was in their family, the ones that broke down in terms of their culture, so it really almost kind of like self-selected into their thematic groupings.
Part 1 is called Girlhood. Part 2 is Relationships. Part 3 is Culture. Part 4, Family. Part 5, Revelations. Caren Osten-Gerszberg and Leah Odze Epstein, thank you so very much for joining us today on Wine and Dine. This is a fantastic book.
Thank you for having us.
We will have links up for you to learn more. And I would venture to say that you definitely want to be a part of the drinkingdiaries.com website, certainly as something to read and talk up during the holiday season. You're listening to Wine and Dine. Now you can listen to Wine and Dine Radio while shopping at the grocery store or your neighborhood wine merchant. Wine and Dine Radio can be heard using your wireless internet on your cell phone. You're listening to iWineRadio. iWineRadio is a production of Food Tastes Better with Wine, on the web at iWineRadio.com. Hey guys, I thank you for listening to iWine Radio, and we are still the only wine channel on iTunes Radio. If you go look under iTunes Radio icon and scroll down to News and Talk Directory, and it's listed alphabetically, click on that and the stream comes up immediately. iWineRadio.com, where you can find links to individual guests. And if anyone's interested in advertising or becoming an underwriter or sponsor, please contact us at iWineRadio.com. We really, really appreciate your support. The more support we get, the more conversations I can have with fascinating people around the world, including you. If you have a story to tell that you'd like to share on iWine Radio, go to iWineRadio.com and contact us, and we'll go from there.